most of our conversations with e-GMAT was based on like how should I encounter verbal. It was more about pre-thinking part. You will have to pre-think. You can't just dive into the answers, which I was doing earlier before 90-point improvement. That was the thing that I was doing. I was actually diving into the options and then trying to eliminate it. But it's more about you have to pre-think it. You will have to assume things. I was having some difficulties assuming things, but then the plethora of questions that we had in the question bank and e-GMAT, that was very, very sufficient. So I could just practice and practice and practice. You will have to take the passage as like a very naive word, like a story maybe, but you will have to read it through. You'll have to understand what they're talking about, the sequence of events. And once you understand the sequence of events, you have that mapped in your mind that, okay, this event happened, then this event happened, then this event happened. When you look at those questions, now you have the target that you will have to complete those questions within a minute, the questions that go ahead. And that is like a bonus kind of thing that happens if you understand the passage. And then if you take 1 minute, then you will save some time for the CR questions if you are stuck. The learning till a point, it's very important that you practice. And while practicing, you go through a lot of phases. You are at a nascent stage, then you learn a lot. Then you have to learn from the answers that the Scholaranium, each and every question has solutions attached to it. So I think that was very helpful. I didn't have to waste time on like searching for solutions and everything. There was a stepwise procedure to each and everything, that how are we supposed to solve a question, in what way are we supposed to think. So that kind of teaches you as well. So it actually played a very balanced role. Not only the learning part, but I think the Scholaranium part was very important because I solved like 700 questions each in each category.
Hi, Nikhar. Thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us, and congratulations on an amazing 675 score with a DI83, Verbal 83, and Quant 84. A 90-point improvement that you fought hard for, and I'm so happy you achieved.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shraddha.
So I've been your mentor through this journey, and I know you quite well at this point. But before we dive into your amazing story, can you give our audience out there a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
Sure. My name is Nikhar and I'm currently working as a senior software engineer at one of the leading investment banking firms. And I've done my undergrad from BITS in electronics and instrumentation, and I have a master's degree as well. And currently, I took the GMAT for my future persuasions in MBA. So yes, that's why I took the GMAT.
Got it. So you knew the MBA was what you wanted to do, and for your MBA aspirations, the GMAT was the first step, right? So how, going through all of this, what did you really find was the biggest challenge you had to overcome to get to that 675?
I think it was a pre-notion of being an engineer and being able to crack the GMAT very easily, but that wasn't the true case. I had given CAT in 2023 and I had scored a 95 percentile around at that point of time. So I thought that GMAT would be very similar to that, easy to that, but I think that GMAT requires a separate preparation altogether. It's a separate methodology. It's a separate paper. So I think there are different ways you have to approach it, and I think that's the main thing that I had to overcome. I couldn't like just be on a preconceived notion that okay, I know everything and I can crack the GMAT, because it's a little easier than the CAT examination.
Got it. So definitely succeeding at the GMAT requires a kind of different mindset and a different strategy. And I think both of those things have come out really well for you, especially in DI, where you're at that 96 percentile with a D83, right? Can you
Yeah.
talk to me about the learnings that you had in DI and what your process was like before you studied for this test and once you kind of finished preparing?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest change that I got was that after taking the e-GMAT course, I found out that you're not supposed to solve each and every question in the examination. There are a few questions that you will have to leave. Even if you take a smaller subset of the questions, like a 5 or 6 questions, and you solve it, and if you're able to solve it, that's great. But within the timer, the whole section, you are supposed to leave 1 or 2 questions, or maybe 3 questions. That won't reduce your score, but at least if you are panicked at the last moment, I think that will reduce the score by a lot more. So I think it's very important to be able to leave the questions as well, and we have the flexibility now to go back to the questions. So that's what I learned through e-GMAT. There were a lot of sectional tests, so I think that I took a lot of them, and gradually I was able to overcome that mind block that I had to solve each and every question, but I had to play it strategically.
Got it. So strategy, you think, is a really big part of the entire DI success story then?
Yep, I think it's very important to put the strategy, and it's very important to divide the DI section into parts as they have divided on the portal, and then you'll have to encounter that what is your weak point or a strong point. So I think that's very important. The strategy is very important. You can't solve each and every question every time.
Got it. So what typically were the questions that you skipped on DI? How did you make that strategic decision?
I think the main thing was about the timing part. I think where I exceeded, there's a long paragraph that you have to read and then you have to answer certain questions. Sometimes those questions are very easy. It's not about read, like even if you read it like a theory or maybe like a story and you own the whole thing, then you're able to answer it very quickly. But sometimes those questions are a bit tricky. So I think those questions I left in my last attempt as well. In my last attempt also, I think even if I was, the only mistake actually I did was that I was giving 15 or 20 odd seconds to each and every question more than I wanted to give. So if I see my chart as well after the examination, the bearing the last three questions, all of them are correct. But then the last three questions, I had only 5 minutes and three questions. So I had to take a decision to at least be able to do some questions. So I took a wrong decision there to do two questions out of five, or two questions out of three in those 5 minutes. But that was a wrong decision. I had to first do one question and then try to do the other two. But I targeted two of them, and therefore all three questions went wrong in that examination.
Got it. So it's definitely an upward learning curve, but I think overall on the test, more or less, it worked out well for you. You got that D83. And one thing that I'm really happy to see, and I can actually share my screen and show you, is this is your last sectional mock test that you took on the platform. Also a D83 very well mirrors the score that you received on the test. So I think that performance really paid off, right?
Yes,
So
correct.
kudos to that. One other thing that I heard you mention and I want to dive into is you mentioned something about owning, right? So you learn this process of owning through your time at e-GMAT or relief prepping. But for those who aren't really aware of what that means, can you maybe give us a bit of an explanation about what it's important to own the data in DI?
I mean, you will have to read it through. You will have to be concentrated while reading it. It can't be multiple readings, of course. You will have to read it like a sequence of things happening. You can't go back to it and then understand and then come back. That's the only time you have. That's where you lose or you win in that particular question. So I think that's where you own the paragraph. You read it like it's something is happening. You just dive into it and put your full concentration into it so that you can understand the things of it. The data part of it you don't have to remember actually most of the times, but you can, like, you will have to know that okay, this particular section had this data or this data. Now you can come back to the data and take a look at it while solving the questions.
Got it. And this is a strategy that helped you across multiple different question types on the test day, right?
Yes, it took a lot of time to develop this, but yes, I took the strategy.
Fantastic. Now, one question type that I know students find particularly tricky on the DI section, but one that's very important is data sufficiency. So what was your strategy for data sufficiency and how did that really play out on test day?
So data sufficiency was actually a mix of two parts, the quant and the verbal. So the quant part I was well versed with because of my background in engineering, so I could solve those questions. In quant data sufficiency questions, I made sure that I reached to a conclusion after solving things rather than just making assumptions after a certain point. Because the questions I solved on e-GMAT, I realized that I'm leaving it at, like, after doing 80% of the question, I'm leaving it and I'm assuming it, okay, this answer would surely come out, but eventually you get to know that there are both the answers are not sufficient. So those kind of things you get it after practice, but you do not have to leave it at a conclusion. And for verbal, I think it's the same strategy that you apply in the verbal section itself. It's not very different, but yes, again, you will have to read through it because sometimes it is a bit tricky, the verbal data sufficiency questions. But yes, it's on the part, it's very scoring as well.
Got it. And I'm sure I know that one thing that people might not expect on the DI section on the test is verbal DS, because you're usually used to practicing the quad style. But how many, if you remember, how many verbal DS questions did you actually face on the test day?
I think there were two.
Two. So
Yes.
about 33% or so, if you had about 6 DS questions then.
Yes, I had or two questions of verbal DIs.
Got it. So very, very important thing to really prepare for, which luckily were. So that's the great thing, right? Okay. Speaking of verbal DS, I think we can move on from verbal DS to just verbal, right? There as well, you did a great job with that V83, just about hitting that 85th plus 90th percentile range. And I think a lot of the things that you talked about with owning the data set also is really important in verbal. But, for verbal, let's really break it down and let's go deeper into talking about CR and talking about RC. Firstly, CR, right? So, what was your strategy for CR questions and how was that useful in the test?
So I think the verbal reasoning, the verbal part was the most difficult part for me
Mm-hmm.
because I was very much struggling in that part, and most of our conversations with e-GMAT was based on like how should I encounter verbal. It was more about pre-thinking part. You will have to pre-think. You can't just dive into the answers, which I was doing earlier before 90-point improvement. That was the thing that I was doing. I was actually diving into the options and then trying to eliminate it. But it's more about you have to pre-think it. You will have to assume things. I was having some difficulties assuming things, but then the plethora of questions that we had in the question bank and e-GMAT, that was very sufficient. So I could just practice and practice and practice. I don't know. I think I might have solved around 700 odd questions for CR because I think that was my weakest point more than the RC. CR was my weakest point. So I solved a lot of questions, and then I was able to kind of pre-think it, come to a conclusion, maybe near to it, and then the options became much more easier.
Got it. And did you find that with this, your timing also reduced as you tackled CR?
Yes, my timing also reduced by around 15 seconds. I was taking around 2 minutes and 10 seconds, but I reduced it to 1 minute and 40 seconds. So I think
Oh,
that
wow.
was a huge thing for me because I was able to save that time. On the test day as well, I was thinking that my like test is not going that well, but it's more about the test getting more and more difficult because you're doing the correct things. But that's a different point of view. But yes, I was able to reduce my time.
Fantastic. 1 minute 40 is really some of the best CR timing that we could hope for. So you've more than hit it out of the park on that front, right? So kudos to you. So I'm really happy that CR went well, and I know it was a bigger challenge than RC, but in RC you fared well, no less, right? Especially when I look at how well you've done, I know you've really put in the efforts to get better at RC and improve your accuracy there. So, what strategies or what changes did you make in RC to really achieve the right kind of scores?
So I think it's a combination of both the timing and how you understand the passage. You will have to take the passage at as like a very naive word, like a story maybe, but you will have to read it through. You'll have to understand what they're talking about, the sequence of events. And once you understand the sequence of events, you have that mapped in your mind that okay, this event happened, then this event happened, then this event happened. When you look at those questions, now you have the target that you will have to complete those questions within a minute. The questions that go ahead, and that is like a bonus kind of thing that happens if you understand the passage, and then if you take 1 minute, then you will save some time for the CR questions if you are stuck. So that was my strategy for RC as well.
Got it. And then I think, both your CR timing as well as your timing on the RC follow-up questions must have meant that on the test day, you didn't really struggle for time.
I just finished my test. I never left any question untouched. So that was a big win for me because uh, the GMAT actual paper just before that I took, I think I struggled completing all the questions, but this time I completed all the questions because I was very concentrated and glued to the screen, and I didn't waste a single second. That was very important for me.
Got it. Fantastic. Right? So, we have DI in the bag, verbal as well. You've made some real great changes. Now let's talk about quant. You mentioned one thing right at the beginning that coming into this as an engineer, you kind of had to reimagine the way that you thought about prepping. How did that work out for quant? How should an engineer think about preparing for GMAT quant?
So first of all, I had preconceived notions, and that's why I was able to do the quant well. But still, I was getting somewhere like I was getting a few questions wrong here and there. I thought that my concepts were particularly very clear, but then GMAT tests you on very smaller concepts, and I think that's where e-GMAT came in because I was recommended to do the pace learnings, and I started with each and every module. I was able to save time as well, and I realized that even if I thought that I knew everything, there were a few things. There were small things which we do not realize in bigger problems that were left out by me, the smaller details, which I was able to cover through the pace learning. So I did it all in a very fast manner because I had very less time between my like the paper that I gave and the other paper that I gave. So, but I was able to clear my concepts a lot, and that actually improved my score as well in quant. So it's very important to look at the smaller details while giving GMAT.
Got it. And when you save time through PACE, which for those out there who might not know, it's our personalized adaptive course engine where you take diagnostic quizzes and really create a very nuanced, personalized pathway for you, where you focus just on your weak areas and strengthening the missing gaps in your knowledge. Through that, you actually save 24 hours of time just on the arithmetic courses alone. So that was, I think, a significant amount of time saved, especially as someone who is on the back foot in terms of preparation time available, really. So kudos to you for that, right? And I'm really happy to know that you very openly admitted, hey, as an engineer, you can't just come into this thinking that's all that you need to really ace the GMAT and achieve. You have to still be strategic about this. You still have to look at all the little nuances in the course and make the right decisions to succeed, right? So that I'm very happy to hear. One thing that I know alongside all of the courses and the learning, one thing I know you did quite a lot of was practice, right? You practiced the hell out of the e-GMAT platform, especially on Scholaranium, on our quizzing platform. So how did having a tool like Scholaranium help you achieve a 675?
I think it's very important to have a tool like Scholaranium to achieve that score or any score higher than that, because after learning till a point, it's very important that you practice. And while practicing, you go through a lot of phases. You are at a nascent stage, then you learn a lot, then you have to learn from the answers that the Scholaranium, each and every question has solutions attached to it. So I think that was very helpful. I didn't have to waste time on like searching for solutions and everything. There was a stepwise procedure to each and everything, that how are we supposed to solve a question, in what way are we supposed to think. So that kind of teaches you as well. So it actually played a very balanced role. Not only the learning part, but I think the Scholaranium part was very important because I solved like 700 questions each in each category, and then the 6 mock tests as well. I gave all of them because I just didn't want to leave anything on the platform eventually. So I think it's very, very important. It's like the 50% of your preparation.
Got it. And that you've practiced well, you've practiced with the right kind of questions, like you've done the cementing quizzes, the custom quizzes, you've taken the sectional mocks. So I'm very glad to see that you were again very strategic about your preparation and your practice. And as we saw from your last DI mock test, that strategic practice led to a very predictable kind of a success on test day, right? So that's the fantastic thing.
Yep.
So that's the practice, that's the learning. But like you briefly mentioned, I've been with you through this journey, and for parts of it I was your mentor as well, right? So along with having the course, how does just having a mentor help you or help anyone succeed in prep?
I think it was really important because I had only 1 month left to increase my score. And I think the e-GMAT team and you put together, like always advised me to do the correct things. I was very adamant to, move to the other sections because I wanted to do the verbal section first and then wanted to move to the other sections really fast because I wanted to practice as well. But you were very adamant that you have to, like win the pre-thinking part, and you'll have to practice it. You'll have to give a test and you will have to show us the evidence that okay, out of 10 questions you are able to solve 8 questions correctly, and then only we will allow you to move to the other parts. Only then we will tell you about it, because it's very important that you master this particular thing. So that kind of thing is very important. If I was there on my own, I would have moved on from verbal section, but I think having a mentor who is very, very strict on like mastering things is very important in times of preparation.
Got it. And I'm glad that both me and my team could help you in every way that we could through this entire journey, right?
Yeah.
So you've practiced, you've prepared, you've excelled. Out of with all of this kind of backing behind you, what was that test day experience like?
Test day experience was kind of familiar because I had taken the GMAT before that as well. But the test day experience was kind of like I wanted to get done with this test. I do not want to give it again. I had prepared fully. There is nothing more that I can prepare on this. I had the mentors, I had the tests, mock test given. So the first section was, I think, what I gave was the quant section because I want to be familiarized with the environment, and quant is a bit easier for me. So that's why I chose quant as the first section. And then without a break, I went to the DI section because I have experienced that after a break, if I give DI, I'm not able to concentrate on the mathematical part of it. So I wanted to give DI just after that.
Mm.
And during the break, I just washed my face. I was very, very trying to be very refreshed, had my water bottle and everything. And I just kept in my mind that this is the last 45 minutes where I'll have to concentrate. That was the verbal section, my weakest section, and I went all in it. I was glued to the screen. I might not have blinked also, maybe for 45 minutes or so. That was that intense. But yes, test experience last 45 minutes was very intense, and I kind of felt like I was doing things wrong in those 45 minutes. But that was more like I was when I had the score in front of me, I was relaxed.
Got it. So overall, I think That relaxation is something that every student needs to strive to achieve, because I'm sure had you been more tensed, things might not have been as easy to accomplish otherwise, right? But I'm so happy that it felt familiar, there weren't any huge surprises, and you were able to execute flawlessly on the test day as well. So kudos, congrats on that, right?
Thank you.
So now that you have all of this behind you, you got 90 points in just about a month, you have that 675, you have a fantastic score split, right? If you had to give advice to other people who might be preparing for their GMAT or thinking about getting starting to prepare, what kind of words of advice would you really give?
I think it's very important, first of all, to practice. Not be overconfident if you are good with, like, if someone is good with verbal or maybe good with quant in their like undergrad experience or maybe any experience that they had. So it's very important to not be overconfident, even if you are giving other MBA entrance examinations. GMAT has a particularly different way of giving the examination as well. So you have to prepare specifically for it. I think for me, I prepared on my by myself, like before the 90-point improvement, and after taking e-GMAT, I could realize that where I have went wrong. So it's very important to have a subscribe to a portal like e-GMAT, where you can practice like any number of questions. They will give you the maximum number of questions. It's your part, it's on your part, that are you able to solve those many questions or not. They will give you thousand questions on each and every topic with solutions, which is very important. So I think having a mentor and having such wide question bank is very, very important.
Got it. And I think I don't have anything to add to that. I think you've given people the right kind of words of advice, and couldn't come better time, because this is the time when people really start thinking about taking the GMAT in preparation for their next steps, right? But once again, congrats, Nikhar, for all the work that you've done, the 675. And I'm sure that all of our viewers, and I know for a fact our entire team, is keeping our fingers crossed for you on your MBA journey moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shraddha. Thank you.
And to everyone out there, if you have any questions from this interview, or if you're stuck in your own prep, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. We'd be more than happy to help you. But I hope you enjoyed our interview today. And until next time, all the best, happy learning, and take care. Bye bye.